Ah shit, wrong video. Spider-Man 2, the 2004 movie tie-in game that redefined superhero games as a genre. With its huge open world and physics-based web swinging, it became an instant hit for Treyarch and Spidey fans. But what if we told you that what we got wasn't all that Treyarch had plans for? Unused and cut content is always something that's delved into very thoroughly by gaming communities, with more notable examples being Sly 2's Monaco level, or even Banjo-Kazooie's Stop and Swap, being a good look at what was to come before changes in development. However, it's never been delved into very thoroughly with Spider-Man 2, so I thought, hey, why not make my own? So join Fudge Budger, Undead Webhead, and myself as we delve into cut plotlines, concepts, and what remains of them, with insight from Tomo Moriwaki for Spider-Man 2, the game. To kick off plotlines, we'll be starting with Governor's Island, being the least developed and also one of few storylines repurposed for Spider-Man 3. Not much is known about this iteration of the storyline, except that it was already cut before writer Matt Rhodes had the chance to begin writing anything at all for it. However, before it being ultimately scrapped, Scorpion was lucky enough to get a fresh new redesign, capturing Garga's imprisonment in his mech suit, being a fully original design compared to the first game, which was just repurposed from the Neversoft game. Earlier version showcases his imprisonment a little more visually. Funnily enough, Governor's Island is still labeled on the map, and even has its own mini-map model. This storyline was cut really early in development since Treyarch weren't able to commit both time and resources to him, but obviously it was revisited later in Spider-Man 3. In the early production of Spider-Man 2, Treyarch needed more enemies to scale walls and to appear on rooftops, so Tomo Moriwaki pitched two cyber-enhanced twins, Ahsoka and Shigeru. Ahsoka was a nimble acrobat with dual katanas, and Shigeru was a heavy tank, with blades on their arms and feet to scale buildings, which could double as weapons. Both twins were under control of a Yakuza boss named Yoshitomo, who sports a white suit and a pimp cane. Other enemy types would have featured a ninja grunt, who would be multiplied as needed, an unnamed bike ninja sporting a helmet and firing an Uzi, and lastly, a techno ninja with the ability to cloak. Some early storyboards show that the Yakuza would have caused chaos amongst the city, and Spidey would try to track them down after robbing a bank. Leftover audio from a male pedestrian can still be found in the files. Take a listen.
Help! Help me! Someone! Yeah, sure. Thank you, Spidey. Yeah, sure, they were Yakuza. They wanted me to pay, or they said they would burn my laundromat. I said no way. Now, my laundromat is gone. These Yakuza don't care. They say they took over Little Tokyo already, and now they're pushing out the Mafia, the Triads, anyone who gets in their way. Listen, I'm getting out of here. I need to call my insurance agent. Thanks again.
Ahsoka and Shigeru were fortunate enough to get fully modeled, textured, and animated. The storyline with the twins was scrapped in favor of Lizard, but instead of me breaking that one down for you, I'd like to hand this one off to my buddy Fudge Budger, who archives all sorts of interesting and niche Spider-Man media, who even uploaded the MTV making of from 2004. Take it away, Fudge.
Thanks for having me. The most intriguing cut storyline of Spider-Man 2 revolves around the Lizard. This plotline is the most developed compared to the last two. Just like Governor's Island, this was also repurposed for Spider-Man 3, but the ambitions for this iteration were far greater. The Lizard storyline was meant to be the original B story next to the main movie plot, which ended up being moved to Mysterio when it was scrapped. The first character featured in this plotline would be the Lizard himself, voiced by Joe Lasky. The Lizard is an infamous villain in Spider-Man 2, and the most well-known when it comes to this game's cut content. Before being scrapped, he was modeled and had his AI being programmed, and even had animation work done. His design is more hunched over, less human, human and more pathetic than scary, with tattered clothing and a large emphasis on a humanoid face. He even got his own cinematic model, which was featured in a cinematic trailer made by Blur Studios for E3 2003. Next up is Calypso, voiced by Angela Shelton. Her design leans more into mysticism and menace, being mostly voodoo inspired throughout her whole design, with her tattoos and staff tipped with claws. Just like the lizard, she was fortunate enough to get her own cinematic model for Blur Studios as well. Unlike Spider-Man 3, she was meant to have a bigger role than just a quick appearance every now and then. And lastly, Kraven was set to return as well, voiced by Peter Lorre. His design features a more grounded look than the first game, getting rid of the classic leopard tights and fitting into a more modern look with the jungle boots, crocodile vest, and riding pants. Being more of an apex predator, he was sadly the least developed character before the chopping block came. This image is sadly the only piece of art that was made of him during production. Just like Spider-Man 3's depiction with its reptilian enemy roster, players were intended to encounter several enemy types, all being unique. The first being lizard minions, designed to be both basic lizard enemies and the fate of innocent civilians turned into lurching reptilian bipeds. Their design is hunched over with beady eyes, razor-sharp claws along with spikes protruding from their back, and a large narrow head. Before settling on their final blue and green color scheme, other color palettes were being tossed around. Following up, we have burster lizards, a genetic experiment created by Dr. Connors. Their design has Asian influence from Chinese lion dragon statues and an orange pustule-covered body, which would serve a purpose. During combat, their back would burst out a parasitic spawnling enemy to send after the player, while the burster parent would go after Spidey. And lastly, we have the Varans, another genetic experiment by Dr. Connors, being mutable and slimy, able to scale walls and would attack with their jaws and tail. After being damaged enough, the Varans would split into two halves, becoming a half Varan. These versions would attack with their hind legs and jaws, unable to attack with their front limbs, moving in a bird fashion. And now we delve from the city down below into the sewers. In development, the sewers, while being a set piece of scenery, were functional mission-critical spaces. Players would have been able to enter for side missions and even use the tunnels as a form of fast travel. But as development pushed towards deadlines, the sewers, along with the lizard plotline, had to be cut to get the game shipped on time. So what was it like? Well, luckily, original creative director Tomo Moriwaki was more than thrilled to share what it was like during development.
We were, I'd like to say about probably 65% through an enormous effort, a huge, imaginative, fantastical underground area that was probably 40% the size of the whole city.
I've actually found a few interiors left over in the files for the sewers.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, and that's something, if you dig into games datas, you'll probably find things that they left, but it was safer to just block access.
Yeah.
Because taking things out of a game can be just as traumatic as adding them in terms of causing problems. We wanted this interior space. Wanted to play with like different, there's different altitudes and, swing and go up and stick to the underside and then crawl into a tunnel that goes up and then go into another space. And then, it's maybe a brief bit of narrow corridor that you're like running in or like sprint jumping in probably. Sprint jumping in and then clipping the sides of the walls and wall sprinting as you then kept charge jumping and web yanking your way through. And then boom, it would open up into a, multiple football field sized area where you might find Lizard and chase him around, ultimately leading to the Lizard boss fight. I think we put a lot of work into that. And that's not something to be proud of, right? I mean, mismanagement and poor planning led to a huge amount of great work by a number of people having to be cut. And so that is tragic.
Yeah, I found a lot of his voice lines internally too. Like, they're still kind of intact, but there's a few missing, but they're all there. I heard from Jamie, I think it was you on another source, but Jamie said that he got to test the sewers and they weren't very fun from what he said. Because you couldn't really swing very well inside them.
Well, it depended on which parts of the sewers, but the main sewer pipelines were 35 meters wide and 40 meters tall. And they were like, the smaller sewer things were obviously sort of terrible for swinging, which is why the, sprint, charge, jump, wall sprint, web yank, charge, jump kind of thing was something that at least we would do while we were testing that stuff out. But the big areas were, I think, in some ways the big areas were more interesting than the city to swing around. They were weird big.
Now, was it going to be maze-like?
Sort of. I mean, think of the main arteries connecting rooms, but the rooms are actually humongous rooms. They're like stadium sized.
Oh, wow.
The main arteries were the 35 by 40 meter tall. So those were okay for swinging. And they would, they had like little like Mario pipes sticking out of the sides with like water dripping down and look just like awkwardly gigantic. Maybe a little channel, like actually a gigantic channel in the bottom middle to look like a place where water could go and stuff. And then the big areas were fantastical in nature, giant shelves with like multiple 20-meter drops and 50, 70 meters wide, sometimes like shaped like like a clover of giant squares so that it's not just a giant open area. And then some narrower pipes that would lead between those or between sub areas or rooms you'd have to go into to like see something or talk to someone. And then small channels that would lead up to the manholes in the city. And so parts of it were great and parts of it were not so great. But maybe the reason why Jamie was thinking that was that we play tested a lot more than what a lot of the other people ended up play testing, just because it never really got completely into the build.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that there's a build out there with the sewers, because that's something I've always wanted to see for like the longest time now.
I find it unlikely. Someone would have to find a lot of stuff, like because it's not in the build. You'd have to somehow find like a Perforce repo from like the early 2000s that was somehow snapshotted and saved. I mean, it has to exist somewhere, maybe, Yeah. But I would be very surprised if that's ever found.
I think the sewers is like the holy grail of Spider-Man 2, next to like Conquer 64 or something like that,
Nice. Well, maybe one of these days, one of us will just have to make that game.
Thank you, Tomo. Now let's get into the story. The storyline for the Lizard was fully written by Matt Rhodes and was to adapt the Torment storyline from the comics. Tons of assets were made and voice work was fully done by the game's cast. Before we explain what would have happened, I'd like to mention we were unfortunately unable to get in touch with Matt, so he wasn't able to help us piece together the story. An estimated 75% of the voice lines for the story are present and left over in the game's files. However, there's a good chunk of missing data, so this will be a rough reconstruction, but here's what we were able to piece together. The storyline would kick off after Dr. Octavius's reactor experiment with Peter going to visit Dr. Connors to make it to class. Just like the final release, he would have been ambushed by Mysterio's flyers. After realizing he missed class, he would head off to the Bugle. On his way, voluntary side missions would pop up about giant lizards rampaging through the city. I'm sure you can already see how Spider-Man 3 reused this storyline because, giant lizards. After taking care of a few batches of lizards, Spidey would finally make his way to the Bugle, where he would learn the news of Octavius's rampage at the hospital. Afterwards, the cutscene involving Connors and Octavius would play out. When the lizard story was cut, this plotline was kept but redone, as the audio for the cutscene is still labeled Birth of Lizard. Peter would leave the Bugle and encounter more lizards. After several more encounters, Spidey would question their existence and go to Dr. Connors to see if he can help. Upon arriving, it would be too late as Dr. Connors has already been transformed into the lizard. Spidey would follow Dr. Connors down, presumably into the sewers, where he would begin arguing with them and a possible boss fight would have happened. Eventually, Connors would run off deeper into the sewers. Police would show up to take it away from there. Inside the sewers, Spidey would sense other people in the sewers and notice dead lizards scattered around, hoping to turn them back. Eventually, Spidey would run into Kraven and Calypso, and they have some banter before going after the lizard. Calypso would put up her preventative walls in place to where Kraven and Spidey would have a rematch. Kraven's boss fight would have had him booby-trapping the arena with bear traps and using his rifle, similar to what the first game did. Meanwhile, Calypso would be chasing the lizard throughout the sewers, and eventually he would become a cornered animal. She would cast her magic on him, transforming him into Lizard 2, also known as the Mega Lizard. His design features fins on his back and shoulders, with the huge back claws on his hands and feet, along with a spine-like tail and long tongue. He would have been around 5 times the size of the regular lizard in comparison. He would have been truly lost to the man within. He was fortunate enough to get fully modeled alongside Lizard 1. His model can be seen in the Game Boy Advance version of Spider-Man 2, which is one of 2 versions that still feature him. With Calypso's walls in place and Kraven tied up, Spidey would grab Calypso's talisman and use it to open up the walls that she had placed earlier. Spidey would presumably have a boss fight with Calypso, and afterward would find out what Calypso had done to Dr. Connors. Spidey would fight the Mega Lizard throughout the night and into the morning, discovering electricity has the effect on him and overcharging him until he goes down. Spidey would manage to shock him just enough to where it would not kill him. Afterwards, Dr. Connors would be brought to Morningside Hospital to recover, and Spidey would take care of the remaining lizards then from the experiments, and that would mark the end of the lizard storyline. Now, as we mentioned earlier, the story was entirely recorded, so without further delay, take a listen and experience it for yourself.
I can't believe I'm late to see Dr. Connors again. Mysterio's robots? No, why now? Well, guess I'm not going to make it to class now. I can't believe I missed his class again. Dr. Connors is going to kill me. Well, since I can't go to class, maybe I should go to the Bugle. At least I can try to earn enough to pay for the classes I never go to. I feel like someone just stepped on my grave. What is going on with these giant lizard attacks? These giant lizard attacks are strange. Who or what could be behind it? I should check in with Dr. Connors. I've been steering clear since I missed class, but he may have an idea where these lizards could have come from. That was Dr. Connors' voice, I'm sure of it. What happened to him? He must have been exposed to one of the regenerative compounds he was working on. But how? He wouldn't have tested it on himself, would he? I'll have to worry about the hows and whys later. First priority is to find him. Don't worry, I'll have you out of there in a second. I'll help you if you let me, Doc. I don't want to fight you. I hate to do this, but... Filthy? It's not my fault you live in the sewer. I know, Doc, I know. I'm having trouble seeing that. Don't worry, I'll get you all out of there. No problem, officer. I can't leave Dr. Connors down there, though. I have to go back in after him. Man, I'm going to have to shower for a week. Long time no see, Kraven. How is prison food? No prison, huh? Then I guess I won't ask how your old costume went over with the other inmates. By the way, who's your new lady friend? How cute. You have pet names for each other. Oh, what does she call you? Gravy Wavy? Snuggle Muffin? Nice to see you still make a decent throw rug, Kraven. That scream sounded bad. I'll have to leave Laughing Boy here to fend for himself. There's some kind of force preventing me from getting through. Kraven must have some way to bypass it, though. I guess this talisman will get me through the barrier your girlfriend set up. See you around, Kraven. What have you done to him? I don't want to hurt you, but that doesn't seem to be a problem. Sorry, Doc, but I've got to subdue you, somehow. He's stunned. Now what? Electricity. It actually seemed to hurt him. I've got to try to stun him again. Okay, he's stunned. Go down already. I don't want to fight you. I just hope this doesn't kill him. Finally, I think I got him. Still breathing. Thank goodness. I'd better get him to a hospital. At least this nightmare is over. Morning, huh? And people wonder why I sleep in class. Poor Dr. Connors. If I never see another sewer again, it'll be too soon. I'm definitely cooled off. No beating up JJ, no matter how much he might deserve it. Still, I should stop by the Bugle and see about a job. Rent is coming up and I'm still short. Troublemakers in Central Park? That seems so unlikely. We really need to talk about your methods for getting my attention. Last time it was arson at the zoo, and now this? A good dry cleaner can get those stains right out. You ever hang out with that crocodile guy on TV? You're like Hemingway Extreme. You're a few sandwiches short of a picnic. You know, I'd suggest a head shrinker, but you might take it wrong. Magic, huh? You ever met a guy named Mysterio? I don't know how you're doing that, but knock it off. How about some ice cream instead? Yeah, well, we have leash laws here, sorry. Hey, I can't even make rent. Whoa, I'm still using my soul. Well, Craven and Calypso are one more loose end I don't have to worry about. Transforming. So that's where he's getting them. I have to put a stop to this. Dead? I have a bad feeling about this. Someone else is down here. These lizards. There must have been a way to change them back. Whoever did this is gonna pay. I have to find Dr. Connors quickly, if anything happens to him. Still not big on playing fair, are you, Craven? Not much of a field. Says the man with the rifle. I have to be more careful and dodge those bullets. Whew, that was close. Craven and his stupid traps. Ah! I should have known he would have the place booby-trapped.
Stay away! I'll flay you alive! You've got to help me, Spider-Man. Filthy mammal! I don't want to hurt anyone. Reptiles will rule. I can't control myself. So close. Soon, reptiles will overthrow this pathetic civilization with a more perfect, cold-blooded order. No one can stop the inevitable. My new race of reptile is superior to humans in every respect. I need more of those worthless warm-blooded vermin to complete my experiment. Rise up, my reptilian brothers! Throw off your mammalian shackles and be free! A time of reckoning draws nigh for your warm-blooded oppressors. Rise up! The age of reptiles was ended only by freak cosmic happenstance. It is time to correct that evolutionary error. Yes. You are witness to a new age dawning. Your extinction is at hand. Fool! You think your bonds could hold me until the police arrived? Calypso! Her name will be the last that you hear. Ah, you've responded at last. It is time we settle our argument, Spider. You have stained my honor for the last time. Your head will hang on my wall. My honor calls out for your blood. Vengeance is sweet and best served cold. I am the beast unleashed. I am unleashed. Today you fall, Spider. Today I am redeemed. We meet once more on the field of battle. I will crush you between my fingers. I will meet you on my own terms. At last, now we can fight man to man.
I am called Calypso. I shall liberate you from the bonds of your humanity. I have freed him. He is now the bestial predator fate intended him to be. May he suck the marrow from your bones. You will pay for my love's humiliation. Spirits curse you. May the spirits take your soul.
Black Cat is one of the standout characters in Spider-Man 2, celebrated for her chemistry with Spidey and her striking presentation, but behind the scenes, she underwent numerous changes in development. To explore that evolution, I'd like to bring in Ian Hosfeld, a talk show host, professional boxer, real estate agent, and the concept artist for Spider-Man 2, to walk us through his creative process.
While working on Spider-Man 2 at Treyarch, I had the chance to reimagine one of the most iconic femme fatales in the Marvel Universe, Felicia Hardy, aka Black Cat. My first take leaned into realism, a sleek, athletic tomboy vibe inspired by actual climbers and cat burglars. Still agile, still seductive, but more grounded. Yeah, I gave her a navel-deep neckline. I had to show some skin, but overall she was built for movement and mischief, not just the male gaze. Then, feedback came. The producer at Activision wanted more of a model type, less streetwise rogue and more comic book glam. So back to the drawing board I went. I came up with a second approved design, still a badass, but with more of a glossy model edge. Sometimes the job is about walking that tightrope between character authenticity and franchise expectations. Many mothers were shocked at the sexiness of the leather-clad vixen, masterfully brought to life by voice talent Holly Fields on their kid's screen, and I know Activision got some heat from that, briefly.
Thanks, Ian. Even with Black Cat redesigned, more work had to be done at the request of Activision, with animator James Zachary commenting, "We made Black Cat really sexy. And we planned on that. And I remember them coming back and saying, she's too sexy, so we have to go in and fill her out a little more. And then we had a lot of cutscenes and moves that sold that sexiness of her. So we had to go in and lift cameras and change some poses. Try not to have her feel so flirty towards Spider-Man. I remember doing a lot of those changes. And those kind of hurt, because she had been done for a long time. You're getting close to the end. You have to go and revisit these animations and this character that everybody actually really liked, because she was so sexy. And you're kind of like, why didn't that get caught 2 months ago?" Appearing alongside Black Cat is Shocker, who also went through several design changes. His first design was sporting a rubberized suit, meant to absorb the recoil of his own blasts, but Marvel wasn't sold unfortunately, so he had to be redesigned for approval. Leaner, sharper, and more grounded look, with a leather jacket and goggles, taking inspiration from the Ultimate comics. Now, you may look at this and go, this wasn't cut, this made it into the final game, which you would be correct actually. This design was repurposed for the Shocker thugs you see in the city and in his boss fights. In the end, the team decided to go back to the classic look from the first movie game for simplicity and tradition. Despite Rhino being the game for a short mission, he also went through a huge design change. His original look went for a classic John Romita Sr. look, being a thick-skinned brute and having an anatomical mass and a hint of grotesque absurdity, being intentionally lumpy. At the same time, however, a mechanical Rhino had just been featured in Ultimate Spider-Man, and so the team at Treyarch took inspiration and made him into the Rhino we see in the final release, which looks sort of like a rhinoceros but bigger, I'd say. As you may know, Mysterio's chapters saw the Flyers, Hoppin' Hacks, and the Mirror Spider-Man. However, there were a few enemies that didn't make the cut early on. Mysterio's hover bots were meant to appear during the burning theater instead of the drones. Instead of firing lasers, they had the ability to shoot flames, while having more of a tank build than the Flyers. Another enemy type would have featured the Clown Assassins, which seemed to be an alternate version of the Hoppin' Hacks you see in the Funhouse of Doom. These guys would have been just another enemy type to beat on, appearing throughout the funhouse and in the city. Early on in the pre-production phase, when brainstorming villains, multiple characters were pitched and conceptualized. Future villains Venom and Sandman were also considered. Venom's design was inspired by Sam Raimi's horror roots, having his facial structure be more grotesque and snake-like, and Sandman serving more as an elemental force than a supervillain, more of a natural disaster with a conscience. Doppelganger was pitched early on as well, being more of an android instead of a monstrous creature. The idea of him terrorizing New York and turning the city against Spidey was played with, but never went anywhere unfortunately. Lastly, we have Silvermane. Pitched late in development, he was planned to appear in the auction that Spidey and Cat crash. His design is a twist on the classic look, having his head within a jar in his abdomen. Since he was pitched so late, he wasn't practical to use. So instead we got the generic mech thugs we got in the final release. And that wraps up Buddy's concepts. Now we'll delve into Remnants. I'll be handing this one off to Undead Webhead. Thanks, Coop.
While none of this sadly ended up getting fully developed into the final game, there are a good handful of remnants waiting to be discovered. Some can be encountered naturally, while others have been found data mining the game's files. The first couple can be found in the fight arena after beating the main story. Starting off with the previously mentioned lizard minions. They're encounterable in the late rounds of all 3 modes, and were thrown in at the last minute. The lizards are mostly finished, but lack a few essential things. But to start off, they have a basic moveset consisting of a claw combo, a headbutt, several lunges, a grapple, and a spit attack, with the spit projectile being fully 3D. Several idle animations, claw combos, and basic attacks. Weirdly enough, they don't play their sounds from before. Instead, they play their sounds from the Skull Gang thugs from the first game. For just being a basic enemy, they're pretty intelligent, being able to tag team the player and work better in groups. They're weak, and also able to be defeated with a basic air combo. They also have leftover animation files to pick up pedestrians. Next up is Calypso, who was just barely playable enough to be put into the arena mode last minute. She's able to be encountered in the boss rounds, and has a moveset of elemental attacks. The first being Ice, being able to freeze the player mid-air, and Fire burning the player, and inflicting damage over the duration of a few seconds. To defeat Calypso, players must find her talisman and attack it. Upon attacking it, it will temporarily stun her. Since she is unfinished, her boss fight can be repetitive and rough. You can also cheap out and stun lock her, defeating her way quicker to get out of her way. She also pairs with the bosses really well, making it a challenge to defeat her, with Rhino and Shocker fighting over the staff. Another funny effect of her being unfinished is her hair strands not being properly textured due to being rushed, along with her not having her staff attached to her hands during all her animations. While Kraven is unfortunately not present, his arsenal is still present, both being repurposed. The first of which being Kraven's knife given to Harry during the scene where he unmasks Peter. The next is his sniper rifle, being repurposed into the enemies throughout the game and arena mode, functioning just like it did in the first game. Several sewer interiors are also left over in the game city, which have been discovered by data mining the game's internal assets. The first one is located across from ESU under a manhole cover, and features pipes, trash, and lights, along with the tunnel at the end going to nowhere. The next one most likely would have been for the story element with Kraven and Calypso in Central Park. After dropping in, we can see several tunnels, one red, blue, and green. The red tunnel leads to a dead end, while the other two lead to their own with moving water and pipes, with baked lighting and a lot more detail than the last. The third interior is super rough and not accessible in-game, and can only be seen with scripts made to view the game's models. The small space has no textures, and features ladder steps and a small tunnel where we can assume water would be present. While not in the final game, the lizard's design was reused by Vicarious Visions for the PlayStation 2 and Wii versions of Spider-Man 3. And that's all that remains from cut content. It's not much, but it's still better than nothing. It's a miracle any of this was left at all. Usually in game development, when something is cut, every trace of it is deleted, never to be found again.
And that about wraps up cut content for Spider-Man 2. I'm really happy to have this video out the door finally and finished. However, if you're still hungry for more Spider-Man 2 content, I have been updating the page for the cutting room floor for Spider-Man 2, adding more unused content that we weren't able to fit into this video, so keep an eye out. Also, be sure to follow Eden Hospital on Instagram, where he posts concept art from his Spider-Man days at Treyarch. I heard there's also Ultimate Spider-Man 2 art there too. Thank you for watching.